Game was played against 2250, and the game starts with one knight f3. Now, one knight f3 is kind of a move that it creates some confusion that what should we do, because the opponent is not playing any pawn in the center, but it is fine. If they are not trying to control center with a pawn, we can try to control center with the pawn. Now, e5 is not possible because it is controlled, so obviously d5 can be played. So I went with d5. Now opponent is going with d3. Now here the main move should be pawn to d4, but when someone plays pawn to d3, it means they're having a plan, they're having a setup in mind. Like every opening has its own setups, right? So similarly, when white is playing something like pawn to d3, it means they are having pre-planned setup in mind, that they will play some pieces. Usually the setup whenever someone plays d3 is to go pawn g3, bishop g2 castles, and play c4 or pawn e4. That is the setup they want to go for. Let's see the game. I went for c5 because if opponent is not trying to control center with pawns, you should try to take as much control as possible. Pawn g3. Now, so this is called as the reverse King's Indian or the King's Indian attack, which is kind of a nice way to play. Usually what happens, let me just show you a couple of moves. Knight comes out controlling center, and again, how can we put one pawn in the center? By playing e5. Now just look at this position. Why I said it is reverse King's Indian, because I will show you the same method, same moves with reverse colors. Just keep this setup in mind. Let's start with d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, pawn e4, pawn d6. Can you guys see? It is the exact same setup, but this time it is black who is doing this. So when black plays this setup, it is called as the King's Indian defense. So we are having a very good control over center, because what are the center squares? These four are the center squares, right guys? And right now white does not have a single pawn in the center, but black is having two good pawns in the center. Black has castled. Now here it is very important to understand one thing which I have seen many times is missed in the class or in the tournament, that when opponent has already castled and when black has not even started doing anything about castling, we should right away start developing our kingside pieces. Meaning you should right away start bringing the bishop and knight out. You should not worry about moves like pawn a6, pawn b5, things like that is not required, because you have to see that opponent has already castled. So you have not castled, you have not even started the process. So now it is the right time to start the process, and you have to be as quick as possible to castle. So I go knight to f6, bishop g5, pinning the knight, bishop e7. Now here I can also go pawn h6. But remember, as I said before, that after h6, bishop take, queen take, the point is I have to castle quickly. So I will be going bishop e7 first, because it helps me castle quickly. So bishop e7, pawn to c4. Now this is a pawn which is a non-center pawn, and this d5 pawn is a center pawn, because if everyone remembers guys, the center is these four squares, and if any of apart from these four squares comes, it is called as non-center pawn. And when a non-center pawn tries to get exchanged with a center pawn, you are having two options. First of all, never take to a non-center pawn. Never do this thing. What are your two options? Your two options are that you can either bring a piece and support. So in a way, you are also developing.
Sir,
second option is, yes.
Can we just push the pawn?
Yeah, so that is the second option. Second option is you can just push it. Now here it is important to understand one thing guys, that suppose if you support it, then suppose if it takes, we can take, and we are also controlling this diagonal in a way. You can also push it, but then this bishop becomes very activated. The moment you push the pawn like this bishop has open diagonal. Remember, rooks like open files, bishop likes open diagonals. So here I just focus on development. Sorry. Wait. I went bishop e6, captures, knight captures, bishop captures bishop, queen captures. I did not capture back by the knight or this knight because these two pieces are already out. They are already developed. So you have to start focusing and choosing what are the pieces that are still sleeping, that are still not developed yet. So it is my queen. So it is a good chance to capture the bishop, and almost after castle, the rooks are connected. I hope everyone is following till now.
Yes.
All of you?
Sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes, sir.
knight to c3. White is also trying to develop normally, which is fine. Here, I made a decision. I can also castle, by the way. I can just castle right away. But I made a decision to first of all capture the knight. Now, after pawn captures, I castle. Now, let us stop here, because whenever we have castled, whenever we have completed the development, we reach a very important position in chess. It is called as turning points. Now, this is the first turning point where white needs to make a plan that on which side white should try to attack. Should it be by playing rook on b1 to attack the b file? Should it be by playing pawn on e4? Should it be knight d2 to open up the bishop? There are many moves. It can also be queen a4 or queen c2 to develop the queen. Now, when you have castled and when opponent has also castled, in your tournaments, what you should do, you should stop for at least 5-10 seconds, because now you need a plan, and that plan you will be playing throughout your middle game. If everything goes right, because of that plan, you will win the game, or if the plan is wrong, you might lose the game. So when you have to make a decision of making a good plan, you have to take time. Okay, now what are the things you have to consider to make a good plan? You have to see that, okay, let me make one move from white. It is queen to c2. Now the development is completed, right? White has also connected the rooks together. Black has also connected the rooks together. And now it is the right time for black to make a plan. Okay. Here, let me stop for few seconds and let me ask you guys, take your time and tell me what would be your plan in this particular position. How would you guys try to start?
I will move bishop to d4.
Bishop to d5 like this?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the idea?
Or I can move rook to d8.
Yeah, you develop the rook on the semi-open file. Fine, kind of a decent plan. Anyone else?
Sir, my idea is rook d8 also.
You're not audible, Avik. Come again.
Sir, my idea is rook d8 also.
Rook d8. All right. So rook d8 is a decent move. You want to develop the rook on the semi-open file. Now you have to start thinking in your mind, what does white? So if you look at the center control right now, what do you guys think? How would white try to take control of center?
Sir, pawn 4 maybe?
Pawn to e4, yeah?
Yeah.
So pawn e4 can be one of the options from white, which is correct. But the moment pawn e4 is played, you have to understand there will be one pawn in white's camp that becomes very weak. The moment white plays pawn to e4, d3 pawn becomes a weakness because no white pawn can support it. Suppose if I just make a move of pawn here, suppose if I make a bad move, and the moment you play pawn e4, can you see d3 pawn is a permanent weakness now, which we can try to attack multiple times? All right, so let's see the game. So here it is a turning point for black. Black needs to make a plan. I played rook to c8. Now, the main reason of playing rook c8 is the queen is on c2. I want to put the rook in the file of the queen so that there can be some tactics happening later on. Also, if this bishop tries to cut my knight, I will not want to cut it by the pawn. I will always want to cut it by the rook. Okay, white plays knight d2. Pawn e4 is avoided because d3 becomes a weakness. Right now, d3 is not a weakness. Why? What is the simple reason why d3 pawn is not
Because of the pawn.
Because of the e2 pawn is the complete
Yes.
answer. Right? E2 pawn is protecting d3 pawn. But the moment you play this pawn, now can you guys see that d3 is a permanent weakness? He cannot
Yes.
push it because it will be captured. We are attacking it more times than they are defending. So my opponent played knight to d2. Their main plan is to activate this bishop on the open diagonal, which makes sense. I played f5. When you are not taking control of center, I have to try to take control of center. So I did not play rook to d8. The reason is very simple, because the pawn is not weak. They have not played e4, so the pawn is already protected. So this rook on d8, it looks like, oh my god, it's a very good rook. But in my thought process, I felt that rooks like to attack weak pawns. Rook don't like to attack pawns who are already protected by a different pawn. So I started playing f5. My opponent played bishop into knight. Now, class, how should I capture the bishop?
By the rook.
By the definitely.
Rook captures. And now this rook is well placed on the 6th rank. It can also swing on f6. It can come on d6. It can come g6 as per the requirement. So let's see what happens. Pawn to f4. Now here my opponent is saying, you can capture me and give me the open file. You can push it and then I will be happy to capture you. Or you can just leave it and defend it. So whenever a pawn tries to attack a pawn, remember, as I said before, it is a center pawn or non-center pawn, all of you?
Not center pawn.
Non-center pawn. So I have said many times that when non-center pawn and center pawns are in kind of attack position, it is not recommended to capture like this. However, in this case, it is a good move. But still, my principle says that I should not capture a non-center pawn by center pawn. So I just played bishop to d5. The idea is that I want him to play pawn to e4, because otherwise this bishop is so active on this open diagonal. So I want my opponent to play pawn e4, because automatically which pawn becomes weakness? The d3 pawn.
E3.
He plays pawn e4 because he wants to block the bishop. And now I am having a non-center pawn and he is having a center pawn.
We shall take the pawn by the pawn.
Okay, how many of you guys say take the pawn by the pawn? Show of hands, please.
No. Yes, sir. We should.
We should take, because as I said before, I will not take a non-center pawn by my center pawn, but I will take opponent's center pawn by my non-center pawn. And it also makes my rook happy. I captured it. He captures. I went bishop to f7. Now bishop f7 is the only move, because if you go here, this pawn is hanging. So bishop f7, pawn goes to f5. Now, let's stop here for a moment. Compare these pieces and figure out which piece is slightly not so good right now as black. Which of the black piece is not
Bishop.
not active? Okay, all right. What else?
Your rook, your f8.
F8. So what do you think? Which is not active? Like bishop is not active more, or the rook on f8 is not so active as compared to the bishops?
F8 only has like 5 squares.
And all the squares are on the 8th rank. They are not even attacking on the opponent's camp, right?
The rook is very bad, so you have to do rook d8 or
Rook
something.
d8 is an option. Okay. Look at white's pawns, all of you, and tell me where is the weakness. There are a couple of weak squares in white's camp.
Huh?
You like this one
No, H. Yes.
and c3 like this.
Yes.
Okay, c3 is a weak pawn because it's isolated pawn. Also, it is not cannot be protected by any of the opponent's pawn. Okay, so whenever you figure out a weakness, you have to fix the weakness, guys. Also, so first of all, let's see the first move, pawn to c4. As I said before, that c3 is a weak pawn, and you have to fix the weakness. They want to play pawn to c4 and block my bishop's path. Can you see? If they play pawn to c4, the bishop will be blocked. So I played pawn to c4, and suddenly the d3 square is a weakness. It's called as a hole. Okay. There's a concept in chess called as weak squares or holes. What are holes? Holes are the squares in opponent's camp where your pawn can control, but no opponent pawn can control. Can you see? There's no white pawn that can control this square. Not possible. So this square becomes a weakness. All right. So now the plan is very simple to go rook d8 and attack. Rook to d8. Pawn to g4. Now my opponent is trying to go for g5 and probably f6 to make this rook happy and also open up my king. So I have to be a bit fast here. First of all, jumped on the hole, because when you have figured out a weak square, you have to remember, this is a theory, that holes should be taken by pieces. Holes should never be taken by pawns. Like if I am having a pawn, I will never try to push a pawn to d3, because then my own pawn will create block for my pieces to go on the d file. But I will try to keep my pieces on the holes, so that if they try to attack, I'll again try to form battery. So my opponent did rook to c1. Now can you see, rook and queen are so passive because they are just protecting a pawn, which is a weakness. So that is the importance of finding out weakness, the weak squares, because the moment you find out weak squares or weak pawns or weak pieces, usually weak pawns, you have to make sure that the weak pawn should not go away. Never try to capture the weak pawn. Always try to maintain the weakness. By maintaining the weakness, you are making sure that the opponent is always trying to protect the weakness, because nobody likes to lose a pawn. So here my opponent blundered. I mean, this is a positional mistake. My opponent should have gone for activity by playing rook a d1, but rook c1 is a mistake. And I want to form battery here. But the moment I form battery, my queen will not be able to not be able to control the diagonal. So any plans, guys? How can I form battery?
So why is it a blunder?
Because a rook doesn't like to protect a pawn. Rooks like to...
Teacher.
Yes, Santosh.
To form battery, we move queen to d6.
But then the rook cannot come to d6. You have to find shortest number of moves.
Look, sir, queen d8.
Queen d8, but then you blunder the pawn.
Moving rook to c8, and then move
queen d6, and then like this, right?
Yes.
It is taking 1 move, 2 move, 3 move, correct?
To c5.
Very good. Queen c5 check. You find a check, and now you form battery. My opponent played queen to f2.
So it's a blunder.
And now it's a game finish blunder. Tactics.
Yes.
Black to play, game over.
So black takes knight.
Rook takes knight because the queen becomes pinned. It's a frozen piece. It's absolute pinned. So the calculation is rook takes knight, queen takes queen. Now rook take rook check first. Rook takes back, and then we take queen. So rook takes.
We have one extra piece.
And now I don't want to take the queen directly because I will lose the rook. So first of all, find intermediate check. And now take. And now in this position, black is +3 and black is absolutely having advantage in the position. So I'll just show the rest of the moves. So they are trying to attack. Never let the opponent piece get activated. Played pawn b5, a4, supported by a6. He captured. Now remember, you should never try to give open files for the operand's rook. Otherwise, they will try to enter and start attacking us. So I should capture by pawn or I should capture by rook. What do you guys think?
Rook.
Pawn.
Sir, rook.
Rook, sir.
Here it is very important for you guys to understand. I captured by the rook because now if they capture, I'm fine. I'm happy because I'll be winning. I'm +3. Okay. So they will not capture. Now if they go here, now I can again block the A file by playing A5. But suppose if I capture like this, now they can probably go rook A1 and they're trying to again infiltrate. I guess this is still winning position, but why do you want to give any counter chances to the operand? So you try to keep things simple. Rook A1, pawn A5, rook A4, trying to attack, defend, king here, king up, king there, king up, king there, king up, and now my operand designed, I guess, at this position. Because now everything is falling. This is falling, this is falling. All right. This is protected, this is protected.